Half a century ago, around an upright piano, Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller began writing the standards of a new type of music that would be called rock and roll.
When the night has come and the land is dark.
The two creative people coming from different backgrounds, different schools, and into one pot. And they're in there bubbling all the time. They're great.
With the Drifters, soul music was rarely sweeter. And with the Coasters, rock music was never funnier.
Take out the papers and the trash.
Leiber and Stoller were writing that type of stuff that white kids and black kids like.
Jerry and Mike were so brilliant with chance-taking and stepping into new territories and don't give a damn about who think about it. Go for it, and pow, there you are.
I held my nose, I closed my eyes, I took a drink.
As songwriters, their forte was rhythm and blues. They wrote some of the most authentic rhythm and blues that white Jewish guys ever wrote.
Going to Kansas City, here I come.
Amazing groove makers. The most simple, basic lines that Mike wrote, I didn't appreciate until much later.
Walking through a party in the county jail. The prison band was there, they began to wail.
Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller were the most exciting producers I had ever seen in the studio.
And I won't quit till I'm a star on Broadway.
I think for us, they were definitely that one step ahead that we always looked at and went, look at that, we should go that way. They were really trailblazers.
So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me.
Did you ever doubt yourselves at the time?
I didn't. He never doubted anything. I doubted everything.
He kept me from doing very foolish things, and I kept him motivated.
We're in Sunnyside. Over there is a grocery. We used to get bagels and lox and cream cheese there. I first heard somebody play Boogie Woogie, played by a black teenager at camp. I tried to do it because I loved it.
By 15, Mike Stoller was taking piano lessons from jazz legend James P. Johnson and visiting the music clubs on New York's 52nd Street.
My mother and I came to California from Baltimore, Maryland in 1945 on a Greyhound bus.
Jerry Leiber originally wanted to be an actor. By 13, he was sneaking onto the back lot at Paramount Pictures, where he solicited advice from director Cecil B. DeMille, who told him to study gymnastics, bodybuilding, and fencing.
Downtown at Clifton's cafeteria, I got a job as a busboy on the night shift. Had this incredible Filipino short order chef. He'd have the R&B stations on all night long. And I remember walking by, and it was a record by Jimmy Witherspoon. It stopped me in my tracks, and I thought to myself, I can do that.
Ain't nobody's business if I do.
At 16, Mike Stoller moved to L.A., where he moonlighted in a Latino dance band. An acquaintance gave his name to a kid from Fairfax High looking to write songs.
There was a ringing on the doorbell, and there stood Jerome Leiber as he had introduced himself to me, and I'm looking at one brown eye and one blue eye, and I forgot to ask him to come in. I was just staring at him.
My pantry's empty. I ain't eating for a week.
And he said, well, I have some of my lyrics here. I said, let me see them. I said, hey, wait a minute, these are 12-bar blues, because that I was familiar with. He started to sing, and I started to play, and we decided that we would be songwriters.
Hard times. Ooh, I feel so bad.
We'd both be puffing away on cigarettes, and Jerry would pace around the room shouting, and I would be jamming at the piano.
I lost everything I had.
Leiber and Stoller built a reputation writing blues songs for artists such as Jimmy Witherspoon, Charles Brown, Ray Charles, and Willie Mae Thornton, also known as Big Mama.
Hound Dog was actually written and inspired by Big Mama's physical self and her demeanor. It seemed very tough and salty and angry.
I just want to let everybody know all about it. You ain't nothing but a hound. When Snoopy round the door. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. When Snoopy round the door. You can wag your tail, but I ain't gonna be you know.
When she opened her mouth to do Hound Dog, that was something you had to see and believe.
We not just made it, we made it really in our image. I mean, that's the record we wanted, and we got it. And we got it to the bricks. I think it was one take. We were thrilled. And I don't remember being thrilled too many times in the 50 years we've been in this business. But that was thrilling.
You made me feel so blue.
And that gave us the validation that we needed, because we knew that we had made that record, even though we didn't get credit for producing it.
We didn't date interracially. We dated exclusively black girls.
Not true. I had a Filipino girlfriend. It was my first girlfriend.
That's true.
Central Avenue was the boulevard of black Los Angeles.
Back when we used to come here, Central Avenue was a very lively place.
Baby, this is what I have to say. Won't you turn the lamps down low?
Yeah, this is where they had the bar. And the bandstand was over there.
Is there a bathroom in here?
People were very well dressed, and it was really cooking.
We used to fight over, like used to fight, kids fight over who's hipper. We used to fight over who's blacker.
Who won?
We both won.
Mike and Jerry began recording a local group, the Robins, and developed a new style of song for them.
So these things are basically inspired by 15-minute radio plays. I grew up on radio dramas like the Charlie Chan, Gangbusters, which is where the intro of Riot comes from, is a Tommy gun.
The CBS Radio Network presents Gangbusters.
On July the 2nd, 1953, I was serving time for armed robbery.
Everything they did was down. It was funk. It was street. And it was authentic.
they wrote songs as if they were black. You know, I said, wow, these guys really didn't know a lot about the culture.
The Los Angeles hitmakers managed to catch the attention of New York's Atlantic Records.
Leiber and Stoller were the first independent producers in the record business. They were responsible for many of Atlantic hits.
In late 1955, Leiber and Stoller began retooling the Robins as the Coasters.
Walked in the classroom, cool and slow. Who calls the English? Teacher Daddy-O. Charlie Brown, he's a clown. That Charlie Brown, he's gonna get down. Just you wait and see.
Why is everybody always picking on me?
We're really trying to put together sort of a vaudeville turn, and we cast everybody for these different role possibilities, and they worked out beautifully.
They were very much tongue-in-cheek as well, some of them. I mean, the Coasters things are wonderful. No, I don't think anybody had done anything like that before.
In 1956, feeling flush from the success of the Coasters, Mike went to Europe. After 2 months, he returned on an Italian cruise ship, the Andrea Doria.
Tragedy and miracle at sea was the story of the Italian luxury liner Andrea Doria, sunk in a collision with Sweden's Stockholm on a foggy night of horror in the crowded shipping lanes near New York. 3,000...
After about 3 hours or so of clinging to the rail of the ship and not knowing what was going on, except that the ship was obviously sinking, we got into a broken lifeboat.
When Mike Stoller's rescue boat docked in New York, Jerry Leiber greeted him with a silk jacket.
And he said, man, we got this smash hit. I said, no kidding, what was that? He said, Hound Dog. And I said, Big Mama Thornton's record? And he said, no, some white kid named Elvis Presley. I said, Elvis who?
You ain't no friend of mine, you ain't nothing but
Elvis, your new record hit, I predict it's going to be one because I've heard you rehearse it. You're going to record it tomorrow, called Hound Dog.
Leiber and Stoller's rough and tumble blues shouted had been slickly transformed into one of rock and roll's first anthems.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. Well, you ain't never gonna ever and you ain't no friend of mine. Well,
I hated Hound Dog when I first heard it with Elvis Presley, and I love it now, so it grew on me like $1 million bond.
If Leiber and Stoller pursued authenticity through their love of black music, Elvis's success had pulled him in the opposite direction.
I never thought he was singing the blues. I thought he was singing songs. And I thought they were somewhat folk and somewhat country and somewhat gospel and a little bit of black, but it ain't Howlin' Wolf.
Leiber and Stoller were asked to write the songs for Elvis's next film, tentatively titled Jailhouse Kid. After procrastinating for weeks, their publisher finally barricaded them in a hotel room. Within hours, they had 4 new songs.
Walking through a party in the county jail. The prison band was there, they began to wail. The band was jumping and the joint began to swing. You should have heard this knocked out jailbird sing. Let it rock. Everybody let it rock. Everybody in the old cell block was dancing to the jailhouse rock.
Leiber and Stoller finally met Elvis when they produced the sessions for the film. When they discovered that Elvis had a love and knowledge of R&B that rivaled theirs, their opinion of him began to change.
And he had an ear, that was touched with magic, and he had a musical soul that went everywhere. He was incredible, and yet he was this kind of just shit-kicking country boy. Go figure it out.
Leiber and Stoller wrote over 24 songs for Elvis, including the title songs for several movies. But the drive of the Presley machine was strictly middle of the road.
And we both said, if we have to go through another score with these repetitions of these kind of predictable songs, we'll cut each other's throats.
I used to smoke, I used to drink, I used to smoke, drink, and there's the hoochie coo. I used to smoke and drink, smoke and drink, and there's the hoochie.
In the late 50s, New York was the music industry. Most of the songs on the hit parade were written at or within a few blocks of the Brill Building at 49th and Broadway. Leiber and Stoller arrived with a string of hits and a tight relationship with Atlantic Records. They wrote for most of the label's artists as well as other black singers.
Preach until you're deaf and dumb. I'm in that soul-saving army, beating on that bigger bass drum. Oh yeah, I used to cuss, I used to fuss, I used to cuss.
They were one of the few persons that when they brought their material, they came and did it themselves. You know, they would sit with you at the piano.
The Coasters remained Leiber and Stoller's primary mouthpiece and started crossing over to a white audience.
Don't talk back. Don't talk back.
Now look, don't talk back. Like that.
Don't talk back.
Take out the paper.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more.
Don't talk back.
It would be hard to stop them from doing a show while they were recording, because you wanted to keep them on mic, but they were bouncing around like a bunch of puppets. But they were great.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room.
In the late 1950s, Leiber and Stoller wrote songs for everyone from screamin' Jay Hawkins to Perry Como. But their biggest hit was a song they had written years before.
Going to Kansas City, here I come. I'm going to Kansas City, here I come. They got some crazy little women there, and I'm gonna get me one.
Kansas City was originally released as KC Loving when Mike and Jerry were 19 years old.
I'm gonna be standing on the corner, 12th Street and Vine, with my Kansas City baby and a bottle of Kansas City wine.
Originally it was done to a kind of blues shout, 12-bar blues, and Mike played it over and decided he was just not satisfied with the 12-bar blues. He wanted to write a melody, and we had a long hassle over that because I loved quote-unquote authenticity. I've since changed my mind.
Atlantic Records needed their help as well, just having lost its two biggest stars, Bobby Darin and Ray Charles.
They got a crazy way of loving her.
I said, why don't you get a hold of 4 guys, find them on the street or in the subway, and make sure they can sing a little, and we'll call them the Drifters. And they said, splendid idea.
It was the most bizarre thing that I've ever experienced.
It's the group that Benny King was in called the Crowns, and they had been enlisted by the Drifters managers to be the Drifters because the other Drifters had drifted apart.
And we ended up with a contract with Atlantic Records because we were the Drifters.
Leiber and Stoller were famous on every session, whether it was the Drifters or whoever else, in the way that Jerry manipulated what he was looking for.
And the actual lead singer was Charlie Thomas. He was having trouble with the lyrics, so they were getting ticked off in the control room. He said, well, Ben wrote the song, well, let him sing it. I said, okay, here I go again in another position I don't like. So boom, here I go stepping up to the mic, and I had him at a disadvantage because I did know the song. But I did not know the song the way Jerry and Mike had arranged it. But I figured, I said, okay, when they counted off, this was the instruction, when I counted off and I pointed you, start. So, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
There goes my...
And I went into it.
There goes my baby, moving on down the line. Wonder where
I closed my eyes, and all the pieces was fitting. I never stopped. I made up things. I made a whoa, 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 la da 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 da. I didn't care what. Just keep moving your mouth until it stops.
There goes my baby. There goes my baby.
I mean, like Leiber and Stoller, for me, the defining record was There Goes My Baby. When you had Benny King, a rhythm and blues artist, you know, singing with the passion and the rhythms of the church and all of that, with timpani, with strings, which Stanley Applebaum, a Jewish man, wrote the strings. But the combination was absolutely magical to me.
I think they were the first to start using strings on R&B stuff. You know, that I heard that, I said, wow, that's different, you know.
There Goes My Baby is one of the craziest sounding records ever made. You know, no drums, it just has the biome beat, you know, and crazy strings. The story goes that Jerry Wexler threw them out of the office when he heard it. He said, what is this?
When they brought me the record, I have to tell you the truth, I said, it sounded like you guys have dialed in two radio stations that are fighting with each other, because they had strings and horns, and they had a timpani, and I thought it was an exercise in cacophony.
Did you really love me? Was she just playing?
Atlantic had a history of doing the unusual, and this was another one of the unusuals, though Atlantic wasn't party to it. It was Jerry and Mike.
By 1960, Leiber and Stoller had become America's #1 record producers.
When this whole world starts getting me down and people are just too much for me to face.
From their offices in the Brill Building, the duo played mentor to a generation of New York's best young songwriters.
So we were writing all the stuff for the Coasters and writing a lot for Elvis, and we just needed a whole lot of material because we were doing a lot of production. And Carole King and Jerry Goffin would come over to see us in the Brill Building, as would Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil.
The Drifters are also produced by Leiber and Stoller, and so you knew you can also have a pretty good record produced if you wrote for them. They had many great lead singers.
Yeah, Rudy sang
Up on the Roof.
On the Roof too. That's right. Up on the Roof.
On the Roof.
Up on the roof. Up on the
Leiber and Stoller also met a songwriter from L.A., Phil Spector, with whom Jerry wrote a song that perfectly captured the mood of the city.
Then they say again, what do you think? What do you think? It's a great tune, man. But it's not a black song. It's a great tune, you know, because it had nothing to do with R&B. And I said to myself, when I finished it, I said, this one will make it.
There is a rose in Spanish Harlem, a red rose up in Spanish Harlem. It is a special one, it's never seen the sun. It only comes up when the moon is on the run and all the stars are gleaming.
What a great visual picture when you know, in the concrete, and you see a rose coming out of the slums, you know, in the concrete.
It's a love song, but inherent in the subject matter is a ghetto. And the sound of that record, too. You know, it's come from another planet.
Well, I remember when Spanish Harlem came out. I mean, Jerry Goffin and I it blew our minds. We thought it was an incredibly poetic song. Try to write a song like that now, and forget about it. I mean, try to get a record on a song like that now. It's impossible.
In the early 1960s, standard sessions lasted 4 hours with 4 master takes recorded.
I must say with Leiber and Stoller, whenever we wrote something and they were going to record it, they understood. They were good. They are great.
Mike and Jerry had good cop, bad cop. Jerry'd say, Mike, doesn't sound as good as it did when we were rehearsing.
Because Mike would be the savior at the piano.
Now, all the musicians are looking at Mike like, this guy's picking on Mike, and Mike is not doing anything wrong, right? They have an empathy for Mike.
But a magic occurs when they start to even fight amongst themselves.
Jerry, never say, I don't like the guitar part or I don't like the horn part. Say, Mike, it doesn't sound as good as when we were rehearsing. That little light went on and I thought, what a beautiful way to handle it. You know what I'm saying? Really classic, really classic.
The Spanish Harlem date had barely 30 minutes left and only 3 songs in the can. Mike and Jerry quickly completed writing a song that Benny King had brought to them.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. Oh, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me.
They created this doom, doom, doom thing and then put me in the middle of that. And they said, when I count to you, start. So they did doom, 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 doom. Because, you know, it was like, whoa, what is this?
And darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by.
Those 2 guys in the studio making a record with a big orchestra and the singers singing and the lead singer singing, the best I ever saw.
I knew it was something different, especially for blacks, because you didn't hear all that stuff. You hear rhythm in black music. You didn't, kettle drums was a whole new game, and cellos, and no, that's not it. But I was nice in the middle of it. Yeah, I felt great. Maybe because I was too scared to feel any other way. I felt great in it.
And I just sat there and I thought, we've come from the garbage pail to now, the petit fours and the caviar. Here we are, this is it.
Whenever you're in trouble, won't you stand by me? Oh, stand.
I do recall that there was some grumbling at Atlantic
Went a
about
half hour overtime. Would you like to deal with that for 50 years?
In 1961, Leiber and Stoller's accountant recommended a standard audit of Atlantic Records. Although they feared offending their friends at the label, they agreed, and the audit revealed unpaid royalties. Atlantic gave the team a choice. They could take the money, or they could continue working together. In the end, they got neither.
But it was a shock because it was family. And these acts that were there were also family, and we were used to the whole rhythm of going there and being part of it and doing things.
Overnight, the 6-year partnership between Atlantic and Leiber and Stoller was dead.
Oh, we had many fallings out. Many falling in and out, but they were with us for many, many years.
I just thought it was a sad thing that happened based on the fact that the artists suffered a lot because we lost them as producers and arrangers and writers.
Leiber and Stoller immediately made a deal with United Artists and began rebuilding their careers.
I can wash out 44 pairs of socks and have them hanging out on the line. I can starch and iron 2 dozen shirts before you can count from 1 to 9. I can scoop up a great big dipper full of lard from the drinker's can. Throw up the skillet, go out and do my shopping, be back before it melts in the pan. 'Cause I'm a woman, W-O-M-A-N. I say it again.
Buoyed by their talent, Leiber and Stoller hardly missed a beat.
And within 6 or 8 or 9 months, we had come up with another 5 hit acts. Jay and the Americans, the Exciters, Mike Clifford, etc. And we were back in business again.
'Cause I'm a woman, W-O-M-A-N. That's all.
I said, take it easy, baby. I worked all day and my feet feel just like lead.
Within a year of their acrimonious split with Atlantic Records, Leiber and Stoller would have their first ceasefire with the label and a famed reunion with the Drifters.
The thought was this, if I may interrupt, I think.
Interrupt?
No, well, I'm going to ask.
Why shouldn't you interrupt? You always do.
I know, but I always ask. I think that Jerry and Ahmed
tried to make a record with the Coasters and failed, tried to make a hit with Benny and failed, tried to make a hit with the Drifters and failed, and out of desperation, they used different producers, called us up. And we went back in, and you know, Babe Ruth hit another home run with the Drifters, made fools out of everybody. We felt great.
That hit for Atlantic was a song that Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil had been trying to record with various girl groups.
They say the neon lights are bright on Broadway. On Broadway.
And we went to work on it. You know, Mike fixed some of the music, and I fixed some of the lyrics, and we put it together.
But when you're walking down the street and you ain't had enough to eat, the glitter of right off and you're nowhere.
And we jumped at the chance to write with them, because if we idolize anybody, we don't usually idolize people. We did idolize Leiber and Stoller because we thought they were just great.
He's more picturesque than I felt I was then. And I really looked to paint pictures more because of listening to Jerry work.
'Cause I can play this here guitar and I won't quit till I'm a star on Broadway.
By the end of 1963, Leiber and Stoller had plenty of strong songs, but no way to promote them. Enter George Goldner, one of the handful of men who had built the record industry of the 1950s. Goldner was a former Mambo King who had built half a dozen successful labels. The partnership resulted in Red Bird Records.
He said, I'm going to listen to all of your acetates as many times as I can, and in the morning I will come up. If there is a hit in that stack, I'll have it. I came in the next morning and I said, so, George, what do you think? And he goes and he picks up this acetate and he says, on my mother's grave. And I said, play it. He puts it down, puts the arm on. Going to the chapel and we're gonna get married.
Going to the chapel and we're gonna get married.
I said, I hate that record. I just hate it on principle.
I knew it was a hit.
I said, it panders to the lowest sentiment in anybody. I said, I can't take it. He said, Jer, he said, who's running this company now? He says, you're a bit of a gambler too, aren't you? I said, no.
Goldner got his hands on Chapel of Love. He had a theory. He said anything that has to do with a name, a number, or going someplace to be in love is a hit. Going to the chapel.
The track was written by Phil Spector with a married couple on Redbird's payroll. Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich were the two most successful girl group writers of the 60s. When Chapel of Love topped the charts, Redbird Records was in business.
And we thought, well, we'll have a couple of little girl groups because that's what's happening, but it's not going to stop us from cutting somebody that sings like Wilson Pickett or Ray Charles or Memphis Slim, because that's where we live.
And since you gotta go, oh, you had better go now. Go now, go now.
The more successful the label became, the unhappier Leiber and Stoller found themselves. Their business partner, George Goldner, was not helping matters.
George was addicted to gambling. And George probably ended up making more great records than you could think of that he never got credit for, that he never collected for because he owed somebody money, and whenever he made a hit record, it was to pay off whatever he owed for it. Because George was a good record man. But he got himself into a bind, so he started, instead of making records, he started making deals.
He would pose in this long walk on the first floor with the Brill building, and it was all mirrored. And he would be walking in, and he'd strike this kind of, you know, like tango.
It was a mambo pose.
Mambo. It was a mambo pose. He'd go like that, and he'd sort of purse his lips, you know, he would go like that, and you look in the mirror, and there would not be an image in the mirror. And then we knew we were in trouble.
He also didn't cast a shadow.
In 2 years, Redbird had become rock's most successful new label. But by the first few weeks of 1966, it was gone. When George Goldner's gambling habits again put him in arrears, Leiber and Stoller sold out for $1.
He was always into some very heavy Shylocks. And they'd come up, and they were always polite and always well dressed, you know. But you could look in their eyes, and you could tell that, you know, you could disappear in 30 seconds.
You can hide down in the alley with your hat pulled over your eye. You can wear a wig or mustache or any old disguise. Well, you can change your name and your address, even change your style of clothes with the shadow.
For Leiber and Stoller, the end of Redbird could not have come at a better time.
I said to Jerry one day, I said, if we get one more hit act on this label, we'll be stuck here for another 5 years.
You know, yeah, 3 great acts came in, and Mike was almost like a steel door. And they were some of the greatest acts ever. Sam and Dave, the Rascals, and
Steely Dan.
Steely Dan. And we turned them all down.
You know, by the time the mid-'60s came around, it wasn't authentic for them to be writing young music for young people anymore. It wasn't who they were.
He basically said to me, Jed, by the time you were old enough to really understand what was going on, I was finished with rock and roll. I had done it. He would sit at his desk, and he had a pack of Camel cigarettes, unfiltered, and a bottle
of Hennessy, and a
yellow legal paper.
He always wrote with just he had like 4 or 5 sharpened pencil, number two pencils.
And he was there every night, smoking, drinking, rocking and rolling.
When he started out, he wanted to be a jazz musician. He was interested in bebop, and of course those guys were into classical music. And it's interesting to kind of hear the subtle ways that he brought that into the music that they did.
Is That All There Is actually the first attempt I made at externalizing some very personal, subjective feelings instead of just songwriting material.
Is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friend, then let's keep dancing.
He could have stopped writing, and maybe in some ways he did, after Is That All There Is? That was his ultimate sort of philosophical statement.
If that's all there is.
And when I was 12 years old, my daddy took me to the circus, the greatest show on earth. There were clowns and elephants and dancing bears, and a beautiful lady in pink tights flew high above our heads.
All the materials from other sources, and you put it through the Leiber Stoller meat grinder, and it comes out the way it is, which is reminiscent of all kinds of things like Big Macs and hot dogs and poetry and murder.
Is that all there is? Is that all there is?
He burns at a very high temperature, Dad. There's no telling him what to do. We've all tried. He's on his second triple bypass now. And still, I mean, I went out to dinner with him last night, and, you know, raising hell, like he always did.
He wears a $35 watch. He's not into big cars or fancy clothes or any of those things. His values are wonderful, and that's really, I really think, that's one of the major reasons I love him.
As they got older, they didn't say, all right, now it's time to compromise. They continued to write the kind of songs that they wanted to write.
They have a vault still of songs. They're so funny. I mean, they have some amazing songs, some of the best songs I've ever heard them write. And I'm just waiting to see what they're going to do with them.
Oh, I Smokey Joe's Cafe. Oh, I Smokey Joe's Cafe. One day.
You're talking about the longest running musical revue in the history of Broadway. The stars of the show were the songs themselves.
Something that, like Smokey Joe's makes you feel that things are possible.
Hound Dog? Kansas City. So, you know, it's like the Mount Rushmore of our generation, those songs. You know, songs that exist, like Always or White Christmas. They exist, nobody wrote them.
Her chill was running down my spine at Smokey Joe's Cafe.
We thought all the standards had been written by Cole Porter and Irving Berlin, etc. And we thought that what we were writing would be over by the weekend.
It's like having suits made, and every suit is different. Not only the color is different, everything about the suit is different. And every time you step out, somebody says, that's a nice suit. And that's how I feel about the songs, you know? Every time I step out in it, it's a nice suit.
Jerry described it once as saying that Mike is the guy that has no engine, and Jerry's the guy that has no brakes.
He invents wonderful stories, great stories that are better than what happened.
That's why I invent them, because what happened usually was pretty boring. And in order just to entertain myself, I kind of embroider them. But he's always there to say, it wasn't like that. He's making it up.
I don't think that's
He's not
right.
a liar.
He embroiders them because he is a natural writer and dramatist. And also he has a very bad memory. So he compensates for it with brilliant composition.
and since I have no character, I don't care about the truth, like most artists.
That's all